Welcome to today's webcast, Understanding Reference Data Management, or Everything You Ever Want to Know About Reference Data But Afraid to Ask. My name is Conrad Drung. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager with Orchestra Networks, and today I have with me Aaron Zornes, Chief Research Officer and Godfather of MDM from the MDM Institute. Aaron, are you there?
Yes, I am, Conrad. Good morning to everybody.
Good morning, Aaron. So why don't we take a look at the agenda? So today's program will be broken up into two parts. Part one will be about reference data management. Aaron will take us through a couple of big concepts around reference data and reference data management. Then we'll also have a quick case study. Now, today, throughout the webinar, we will be doing some polls. And what will happen is I'll push a poll to you guys. You'll have a couple of seconds to answer the poll, probably 15 seconds, 10 seconds to answer the poll, and then we will share the responses with you. And if you have any questions, you can ask a question to us in the question window, which should be in the lower right-hand corner of the GoToMeeting control panel. And then also, if you wish to chat with us, you can send us a chat message in the same device. So there should be a chat window right there. So for today's first poll, we'll ask just kind of a quick overview question about what is the effectiveness of your reference data program today. And so we'll wait for a couple of seconds. So this is just to select one, just choose one item, and then we will go ahead and wait for a couple of people to answer. Okay. Oh, wow. This is kind of cool. You can see the number of people voting. So I think we have a quorum here. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And let's go ahead and share that poll. Okay, so yes, so we can see that there's a lot of people who are interested and who need improvement for their programs. Well, thank you for responding. And so with that, Aaron, I think we're ready to go. Why don't you go ahead and get going? Thanks.
Thank you. So a little bit of background about the MDM Institute. I looked at the pre-registration list, and we know a lot of you folks, but some of you don't know us. So basically, we're a research firm that focuses on master data management. We have a large group of customers, about 150 large companies, who we consult to directly about their MDM and RDM and data governance programs. We have another 40,000 people through Twitter, LinkedIn, et cetera, email who track us. We have all the usual deliverables of a research firm, newsletters, studies, white paper reports, workshops, all that happy stuff. We're also running a series of conferences around the world, and Conrad's team was with us in Singapore just last week, where we had several hundred people at our third annual one in Singapore. That is the MDM Data Governance Summit. So that's where we get a lot of our information. Is we meet people, we learn about their programs, we share information, and that's just a great way to do research, is by talking to people who actually do the real work. So what is reference data? Our definition for purposes of this presentation would be it's the glue. It's that information that is coded, relatively stable, it's semantically stable, and it's shared by multiple constituencies. For example, different application systems, different domains within a master data management hub. These are all concepts that are all users, if you like, consumers of reference data. And so, as you can imagine, reference data is very important to make sure that everybody speaks the same language, that everybody is able to talk to each other and transact together accurately. So if we talk about the logical view, there's two types. There's private and public reference data, and we'll go into a little more detail later as we drill down. Okay, so this private and public type of reference data connects your MDM domains and your application systems. And likewise, you're going to see that we need such consistent values and the semantics to go with them in order to affect the real multi-domain MDM. So a lot of the MDM systems out there, you'll see, have multiple software stacks that really don't link together. They don't link together because they don't have semantically consistent reference data, metadata, et cetera, to allow them, and processes to allow them to hook together. So here we see some examples of some, in the purple, of some of the various reference data that can be shared among two very important domains, that is party and thing, or as most people say, customers and products. So clearly you need some semantically stable reference data to allow these two systems to interact. So why is reference data so important? Why is it, getting so much attention now among the consultancies, among the vendors, among the large companies, et cetera. Well, it's come into its own as a commercial class of software, basically, because large organizations in particular, not just banks, who have a major issue with reference data, but all large organizations, large enterprises, realize that if they have errors in their reference data, it has a rippling effect. For some people, unfortunately, it's a tsunami effect where it wipes out systems downstream even if the data cannot transact. So it's very important that we have solid, publishable, trusted reference data, et cetera. And not just in the operational sense, the transactional sense, but also the analytical sense. Because if you're going to be doing reporting or analytics, Lord knows you've got to have consistent terms and use of those terms semantically across your system, and values, I should say. You need to have consistent values across your reporting and your BI systems, otherwise your reports don't foot up. The cross totals, et cetera, do not pan out. So it's very important to have this capability where you want attributes. You need hierarchies across these attributes, across these coded tables, and likewise the key performance indicators. So now we've seen that a lot of organizations in my practice that I talk to, they've come to some sort of epiphany where they understand that reference data theoretically is a subset of master data management. Yeah, it's got data, yeah, it's mastered, and yeah, it's got hierarchies to manage it, and there's governance processes. You know what, it sounds like a nice simple subset. Let's start with reference data, they might tell me, or tell the vendors, the software vendors, let's start with reference data as a proof point for how well MDM will fly in our organization. Let's see how hard it is. And so that's an interesting point, because that's putting a lot of pressure on vendors now, software vendors, to come up with RDM as a quick time to value enabler or accelerator set within the overall MDM products that they're selling. So our bottom line thought here is that reference data has become an entry-level point, if you like, a starting point for many people who are planning their master data management and data governance. Now, it's not just the simplistic transactional and reporting consistency that we need. It's also clear that you need governance, because if reference data is the glue that makes your systems transact together and report well together, then if they're the ones that transact and report well together, you've got to have compliance. You've got to be able to prove that you are governing yourself correctly, that you are creating such reference data and you are managing it or according to the rules. The legal entity identifier, LEI, for those people in financial services, ICD 9 and 10 in healthcare, and so on and so on. Across various industries, there are standards that you're being held accountable to, and therefore you need to be able to prove through governance that you've got this under control. So it's not just transactional, it's not just operational, it's compliance. And that's a major issue for a lot of companies. And now, as I said a few minutes ago, just like we used to build our own master data management, we used to build our own accounting and human resources, no, we buy them now. It's the same increasingly with reference data. The software is of such state and quality and packaged such that it's approachable by most organizations, not just rocket scientists, and it's far more than just using Excel or simple databases to manage your reference data. It's got to be embedded in the systems. It has to be something that can be pushed out through an enterprise service bus or Java messaging, et cetera. There's all sorts of levels of integration for reference data, not just some passive spreadsheet that some IT manager or departmental leader is managing for the company. So if we talk about the types of reference data out there, we need to make it clear that there are really two types of products that are being sold in the market. One is real-time on the right-hand column, the real-time transactional, and the other we'll call multi-domain RDM. So real-time transactional, those are the securities people, the capital markets people who are creating products and have to have real-time pedal to the metal type straight-through processing speed so that they can transact at sub-second type transactional level. And so they have a different mode of software, a different set of products that cater to that industry in particular, that vertical industry of capital markets and related. And then for the rest of us who have ERP rationalization, who have BI and reporting system rationalization, who have transactional rationalization, who have domain rationalization among the domains in our MDM hubs. And by the way, it's not just within a given brand of hubs, but we might have more than one brand. Some of us might have SAP MDM along with IBM MDM. And we have to make those two work together. We have to have them sharing information. So again, what we call that type of master data management. We call that multi-domain RDM. So multi-domain RDM is that general purpose RDM as opposed to industry-specific real-time transactional MDM. And if you look at multi-domain RDM, the various use cases, there's a lot of public information like the ISO codes for currencies, time zones, and country abbreviations. Likewise, there's NAICS and ISIC for industry classification. And then when you look at the private type of reference data that you want to share among your applications and reporting systems, et cetera, you typically as an organization, you might take that semi-public or semi-private data such as Dun & Bradstreet or Bloomberg and further customize it and create your own hierarchies rather than just using the Dun's hierarchies that you get from Dun & Bradstreet. And so when you do that, you start creating your own private reference data. You have hierarchies of entities, not just chart of accounts, but geographical organizations for sales territories and alignments. Likewise, how you organize your human resource assets, et cetera, et cetera. So these are some of the types of use cases that you'll see in the public and private multi-domain RDM.
So, Aaron, why don't we go ahead and ask a quick poll to find out what
good time.
are managing? Okay. So another poll, another quick poll here, and it's really about what kinds of reference data does your organization need to manage, and for those that wish to participate, you can please do so. We certainly appreciate your responses. And we can take a look here to see what people are doing. And I guess I'll wait till about 50. Okay, so with about 58% of the people responding, here are the results. And based on what Aaron was talking about, I would say, Aaron, I guess what we're seeing here is it looks like a lot of people are managing kind of private multi-domain and public multi-domain. Is that what it looks like to you?
Yeah, I can't see the poll here on my end when I'm running the event.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, I'll read the poll results to you. It looks like here that about 82% of the people are saying they're managing organizational legal hierarchies, financial accounts. And the next highest one is country, time zones, industry codes, or specialized codes such as ICD-10. Okay, well, let me hide this. We'll make these poll report results public later, but I'm sorry, please continue.
Great, thank you, Conrad. So if we're talking about, again, we've defined what reference data is. We talked about the types of reference data. We talked about some of the products, you know, the real-time transactional RDM and then the multi-domain RDM that most of us are going to be using. And we said, yeah, this is important glue because it allows everybody to transact and report consistently and also to be compliant. Well, let's get some examples and drill down a little bit further. So one of the ways organizations want to use RDM, in my experience, is they're looking at it potentially as a semantic layer that unifies other MDM hubs. That is, they realize they have two different brands of hubs. There could be two different generations of the same brand, an older version and a newer version. They just can't migrate to the newer off the perhaps one of the older hubs. But in any case, if they have multiple MDM, either brands or versions, or even domains within the same product family, such as an Oracle, an IBM, or even SAP sometimes, you'll find that you need a layer. So some of my large customers have been building out by hand their own semantic layers on top of SAP and IBM, for example, a common scenario, those MDM hubs. So that's what we call the hub of hubs, where you create a semantic overlayer or Uber hub to do that. Another reason why you might architecturally go down that route of managing reference data separate from your MDM hubs is perhaps you're doing a federated model where you have multiple MDM hubs of the same brand and you need some way to rationalize or roll those up and to coordinate them as hubs, because there are use cases where you want the various operating divisions in the Americas versus Europe versus Mideast versus Asia, where they may have their own instances of X type of hub, or your brand, single brand of hub perhaps, or even different brands, yet you want to consistently keep them synchronized and coordinated for reporting and for compliance and for transactions. And that's within your company, let alone with your business partners where you need to speak the same language as well and have that level of consistency. So one common example we can all relate to is the geocodes. Okay, so if we look at the ISO 3166 code, even those codes change over time. I mean, countries change names, countries demutualize or split up or merge again. You know, so there's all sorts of political and other gyrations that cause the family of nations to change, expand, and contract over time. And so you need to be able to even track that over time. So that brings up an interesting notion of temporal or time travel, being able to go forward and backwards, being able to look at the past, and also being able to project into the future how different structures or hierarchies of organizations, of geos, et cetera, will look. So if you think about the typical company, your applications, you have geographic codes embedded all over the place. And historically, those applications maintain their own data. They may have gotten it shipped to them once a month, once a year when they were updated, when they were synchronized across the company perhaps, but that's the past. The way to go now is to share that information centrally or in a distributed architecture, but the idea is to manage it centrally, govern it centrally, and then publish it. So again, this logical concept says that reference data will connect your domains and your applications. In the past, if you think about it, those local copies were maintained individually by those apps. Now we're saying is don't do that because there are too many problems governing that, synchronizing that, tracking versions, and also rationalizing the different hierarchies and internationalization even of all of the above. And so it's a much better solution to manage reference data independently. So if we look at, you know, how could you do this on your own? You know, before there was really commercial RDM software, how did you do this? Well, clearly, a lot of people did this through the custom build, do it yourself, home built, etc. And that had a heavy total cost of ownership, as you might expect. Some people were taking spreadsheets and using that to hammer out some sort of solution. Again, manually, you know, not a good way to be able to prove compliance or to share or to manage hierarchies and versions. It's just a mess, okay? And then you could also take some of the hierarchy management solutions like Microsoft Master Data Services, the Project Bulldog that they renamed their MDM product as Master Data Services at Microsoft. Oracle's Data Relationship Management, the former Hyperion, HYP Hyperion. Okay, so you could take those systems and create hierarchies, and they're pretty good at managing hierarchies, but they really don't go across domains to the degree that we would like, and they don't have the integration with all the other apps in terms of being able to do Java message or RSS or any type of feeds as the pub-sub type model. So they're missing a lot of what we think of the glue capabilities. They're just there to manage a hierarchy of some sort. Now you could take an existing commercial product out of the MDM world that does customer or product, and you could they typically give you the ability to do a custom domain or a custom intelligent object, blob, basic object type. But when you do that, you're responsible for the maintenance, and it doesn't have all the workflows associated with it, and it doesn't necessarily do the hierarchy management. It doesn't necessarily do the level of integration that we'd like to see with other consuming applications of reference data. So you could do it, but it's not an ideal way to go. Some organizations will force fit their ERP or their CRM system to take an enterprise app and say that's going to manage the reference data for it. Its tables will be our single source of truth for that reference data. But again, how do you map it into the other systems? You know, where does that mapping take place, and how do you publish it? So that's something that's missing if you use that as your golden source of reference data. And then there's also the real-time transactional stuff, which is very premium priced, a very high price. So it's like taking a Mercedes and turning it into your child stroller. You know, it's not something you necessarily want. I'm not sure that's a good analogy, but the idea is overkill, overpriced for what we're trying to do. It's got such high throughput, such high price, that's really not what we need. You know, it's best for those capital markets and for those command and control military type situations or intelligence situations. So how do you evaluate the products that are out there, that are coming to market, that are in market already? Well, working with our advisory council of 150 large organizations, as well as meeting with several hundred companies a year who are doing master data management, data governance, reference data, et cetera, we refine a set of top 10 evaluation criteria. We do this for MDM, we do this for data governance tools, and we do this for RDM now as well because it's a topic of interest for our clientele. So here's a short list of 10. And what we do is, as a research firm, the MDM Institute also publishes a number of market studies. And January 15th, we'll release a 30 or 40 page or so market study on reference data management that will talk about each of these evaluation criteria in prose detail. So you'll have several pages of, if you like, depth drill down into what these mean and why you do them. It will also cover a lot of the material we have here in today's presentation, but it'll capsulize it into, again, a 30, 40-page report that'll give you a good hands-on primer about what is RDM, why RDM, how to evaluate it, who are the players, and also some use cases. So given the fact that this is a relatively new market, the commercial multi-domain RDM, and given the fact that the mega vendors and best-of-breed vendors are all coming out with variations of their product or specific products to map to this requirement, how do we evaluate? So we use some criteria like this. And to give ourselves a little bit of detail, here we have some examples of how do you administer some diverse reference data types. For example, if you had, by the way, this example is from our New York City 8th Annual MDM and Data Governance Conference that we did October 14, 16 in Manhattan. We had about 500 people there, and Rick Thompson from Credit Suisse gave a great presentation on multi-domain going global, if you like, with enterprise reference data management. And so this is an example drawn from one of his charts where we had financial instruments cross-linked with ledger data, chart of accounts, trading book, mark book data as private reference data, and then likewise it had to be related to and managed along with the public reference data such as currency codes and the country codes, we said the ISO 3166, et cetera, as well as the different calendars, financial calendars and legal calendars, and not to mention the cultural calendars that we also have to deal with when we're truly a global company. So here's an example of a company, Credit Suisse, a very large company, as you can imagine, diverse across the globe, a capital markets company, but at the same time they've got regular metadata, reference data like the rest of us. So this is not just transactional reference data, this is also the glue that lets their reporting systems work together, and that also lets their HR people work together, and also lets their product managers and so on work together. And so what we're suggesting here is that if you're looking at a reference data commercial solution, you want more than just one or two reference data types. Okay, there's a whole world out there of diverse data types that we've briefly touched upon that we all commonly use, and so you want to look with a with a hard eye as to what levels of support the commercial products have. And again, that's a good reason why when we look at doing it yourself using a multi-domain or multi-entity MDM hub, if the vendor suggests you do it yourself, you need to step back and say, whoa, what am I getting into? How much of this stuff do I really need to manage? Because other people have pioneered this before you and have gone down the road of reference data and have thought this out and worked it out. So there are some good commercial products out there, so you don't have to do it all by yourself in a multi-domain MDM hub or other piece of software. Another consideration, again, we mentioned the ability to map reference data, to transcode among systems. For example, the ISO code 3166, 3-character versus the 2-character country codes, et cetera, that are managed by that body. So if you look at the various countries, with not just Yugoslavia, but with the former Soviet Union, along with Africa, there are a lot of changes in the various country codes, and for audit purposes and reporting purposes, you need to be able to reconstruct the past, and you need to be able to report across systems consistently and transact. And so it's important that you have a common set of codes for this that are public data in this case, and you don't want to have to replicate it into each application. Why not have them shared and perhaps pub/sub it as they need it, as opposed to each application group within your company managing such data themselves. So again, we're talking about preserving values historically as well as mappings across the different data sets. There you go. Now, talking about time travel as well, the temporal referential integrity. We look at, my favorite example is ICD 9 and 10, but for example, ICD, the International Classification of Diseases, ICD 9, the old version, and ICD 10, what we're all moving to in healthcare. Basically, in the old system, ICD 9, you had one code for broken leg. Now in ICD 10, you have 4 or 5, or I forget how many different codes as to what part of the leg was broken, how fine a break it was, blah, blah, blah. And so you need to be able to map back and forth between the old and the new. And the same thing is true for NAICS, the industry classification system. You need to be able to look at, for example, how alternative energy has evolved and how we have much more many more codes now to manage for the accuracy and for the compliance reasons. And so, again, different types of reference data, the ability to go back in history, the ability to maintain those values in history, and to be able to do a crosswalk across the systems to see the integrations, the relationships, and to manage them hierarchically. With all this said, we also want workflow, okay, and we'll call that governance. We have our subject matter experts who perhaps maintain our reference data internally to our company, our own private reference data, who may be taking the Dun & Bradstreet or the Bloomberg or other hierarchy enterprise data and repurposing it for our own purposes. The ones who maintain our sales structures, our geographic reporting structures for sales organizations and for financial organizations. Those experts need workflow so that we can ensure compliance within our own needs for complying our own processes, our own governance. And so, again, how do you manage who owns what? Here we have some data stewards in the bottom left, Bruce and Tony, who have their particular responsibilities and permissions to execute on the governance. Now they're responsible, the influence, the consultant, et cetera, the RACI type, if you like, influence or management within data. So if we talk about what do we need to know about workflows, well, there's all sorts of workflows. Who's responsible, who has permissions to even read, who's accountable, who's consulted, who's informed, all that good stuff. And so we also want to be able to do this not just at the field, but at the instance level within a field, a code, and likewise container level where we group these together. And also we want to, of course, be able to go back and do audits and be able to prove to ourselves and to the authorities that we are managing this appropriately. Now, hierarchy management is something that's sometimes glossed over by some of the MDM products, in that everybody does hierarchy management, but everybody does it slightly different in terms of the level of support for hierarchies. So, for example, we all know that, you know, enterprise risk management is an important capability to keep track of various organizations, their industry codes, their parents, their siblings, and to be able to roll up, roll down, drill up, drill out, drill sideways, et cetera, to examine and to look at various risk exposures and other situations. And likewise, we've got, when we're looking at the various ICD-10 codes for drugs and their effects and for the interactions. So it's very important to know that we have the ability to manage hierarchies in flexible ways that reflect our business requirements. Time travel, if we look at, again, how organizations have structured themselves, you know, organizations evolve. That's just a fact of life. That's one thing that's stable, is that we know we're going to have change. And so if you look at where you were at a certain period of time versus your current period in time, then likewise if you're going to be doing some sort of reorg or demutualization or merger of your company, you may want to project out how this organization will work and how the numbers will roll up in terms of people, revenues, expenses, et cetera. So this is all important stuff to be able to manage across time. And in fact, it's not just for RDM, but for master data management as well. We're starting to hear this requirement from some of the large financial institutions in particular, that they want more time travel built into all their MDM, not just their reference data. And so the common concepts you'll hear when you talk to the RDM people is the as of or the effective date, et cetera, just common language that we all use. Now, as a research firm, the MDM Institute, every year in December and January, we put out 10 or 12 strategic planning assumptions. We call these milestones as well, milestones on a map, if you like. So we put a stake in the ground and say, relative to big data, relative to data governance, relative to reference data, relative to pervasive MDM, et cetera. You know, here's what you need to know over the next several years, and here's what you should be doing about it. So if we look at the reference data management assumption that we put out January 2012, which will evolve in the next month or so, and by the way, you can go back in time with us, do time travel with us, like Gartner, Forrester, and myself at the MDM Institute. You can go back in time and look at our strategic planning assumption, and look at our forecast, and see what we said 2-3 years ago and how it panned out. Very interesting exercise. But in any case, I digress. Back to this particular planning assumption from earlier this year from the MDM Institute, we said that reference data was going to emerge as a key entry point. We said this a year ago. And not that we're looking for data to support our case, but you know, it hit us in the eyes. More and more, as we talk to the evaluations, the RFPs, the requests for tenders, requests for proposals, etc. Doesn't matter what language, Portuguese, Spanish, English, Russian, as we look at these things, yes, reference data kept raising its head as a common requirement that was being called out. And in fact, as we talk to these organizations, the large companies, large enterprises, they started looking at RDM as a proof point, as a proof of concept where they were going to test drive and see the time to value, the ease of use, the flexibility, the performance, etc., of their bigger MDM requirement. So as a result, we've had a lot of pressure on the vendors, the MDM software vendors, to rush to market something to do with RDM. Some have done a better job than others. Some are still talking as if they have a toolkit, and oh, by the way, take our toolkit, you can do anything. And, buyer beware is our warning on that one. So what we've seen is that the large enterprises in particular have mandated that reference data is part of the native MDM software they're buying, and then it'll not just be, you can do it, but here it is, off the shelf, ready to go, you customize it, etc. Now, as a result, we're also seeing some commoditization. Microsoft was supposed to, that is, they were supposed to have announced this summer their own reference data. So Microsoft had something on top of Microsoft Master Data Services and Excel, a product that was demoed for a while and their corporate sales teams took out, but it didn't get formally announced yet. And we don't know why. Microsoft is very compartmentalized. It's hard for even Microsoft to know what they're doing, let alone the rest of us. So in any case, though, we expect vendors like Microsoft, and when you buy Oracle, UCM, or CDH, especially UCM, Oracle throws in DRM a lot of times. It's bundled into the price of the enterprise license agreement. So a lot of people have, because of the fact that Microsoft Master Data Services is free. It's part of SQL Server 2008 Release 2 and part of SQL Server 2012. It's bundled in. As a result of the fact that Microsoft and Oracle bundle in reference data of sorts through their hierarchy management capabilities, you're going to see that it's going to be pretty widespread at the departmental level as well. So again, we're talking in this session about multi-domain RDM, not about the transactional real-time RDM. So what is some of the competition again? We said there's custom built, there's the hierarchy management solutions, there's the do-it-yourself using a classical MDM solution, and then there's multi-domain RDM where some of the vendors have put in the workflow, have put in the hierarchy management, have put in the transcode table capability, et cetera, who have packaged it up for you. And then there's some specific build also, not just the real-time, but for specific industries. There are certain organizations and certain consultancies that build out RDM solutions for pharma, for healthcare, for ICD 9 and 10, for anti-money laundering, for OFAC, the Office of Foreign Assets and Controls. Some vendors are doing it for LEI in Europe, for Basel 2 and 3 in terms of being able to track your legal entities, legal entity identifier. And so there is a diverse marketplace taking place. Our view as consultants and as analyst advisors is to seek out multi-domain RDM for most of us. And when you look at the vendor, look at their experience, in particular handling complex reference data, not just the simple. And if we look here, we have a recap of the top 10 evaluation criteria.
So before we go to the recap, Aaron, why don't we push another poll?
Good idea.
Just to find out. Okay, so in this poll, we are asking what tools are you using today to manage reference data? So if you have 5 or 10 seconds, please go ahead and answer the questions here. And we'll go ahead and see. And I think the final bit here is that if you have a tool that's not currently listed here on the poll, feel free to send us a little message to the chat window, which is in the lower right-hand corner of your dashboard. Oh, interesting. So with about 60% of the people voting, I'll go ahead and close that, and we'll share the results. It looks like the overwhelming winner is custom-built solutions or spreadsheets. So, Aaron, this is not surprising in your experience, is it?
Yeah, it's just practicality. It's what we had to do to get through the day and to get our systems to talk to each other.
Yeah, so custom-built solutions and spreadsheets is number 1, and then number 2 is ERP or enterprise applications. I think that's also very common. I know a lot of people that use like the Salesforce system as their basically CDI platform. It's also not that surprising, is it?
No. Again, it's what we had. It's just like a lot of people use their CRM or their policy management system or their prescriber system as their source of their golden source, their system of record, because that's what they had. That was their best option at the time.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and move on. So we're here at the recap.
Okay. So again, MDM Institute as a body of consultants, we talk to organizations across geographies, across industries, and over the years. And each year we put together the top 10 evaluation criteria for MDM, for data governance tools, as well as for RDM now. And part of what we do is we issue a series of field reports where we actually look at specific products and hold them up to these top 10 evaluation criteria, and also look at their architecture and their history and project their future and their competitiveness and blah, blah, blah. So this is a lot of what we do in our day-to-day interaction, and the artwork is us working with other consultants. No, actually it's the other vendors working with each other trying to duke it out in the marketplace. So here's some examples of the field reports that we have on our editorial calendar for 2013. So far, we've already executed the IBM RDM Hub. We've already executed the Software AG Hub, and likewise we've executed Orchestras. We've done a field report on them based on demand in the marketplace, and we started meeting with some of the users of the other systems, in particular SAP's Master Data Governance for Reference Data, which is not an official product yet, but it's something that's been broadly enough discussed, and we're legally allowed to talk about it at this point. So suffice to say, if you see these vendors doing something, then it must be a market. It is happening. Here's just a screenshot of some of the levels of details that you get when you get them. And by the way, there is no cost for these field reports. They're publicly available on our website, on various publications. Information Management Magazine will have access to these. Some of the vendors will rehost the stuff and so on. So here is the recent one that we did on Orchestra's EBX product for reference data. And in particular, again, we bumped into this at BNP Paribas, Credit Suisse, Michelin, and some of the other large companies that, we're not just doing this in one department, but they took this out on the enterprise level to coordinate globally and across the enterprise itself, which is a rather large organization when you look at these companies, to pull together and to share this very important reference data. So we've established that, the second bullet point on the strengths, that this is an enterprise scalable solution for reference data. When we looked at the various types of reference data that they were handling, and the time version support, and the hierarchy management, et cetera, it was all there. And on top of that, they're one of the few products that has a cloud-based, software as a service type solution, where I can very quickly throw it up and go globally, if you like, in a distributed company and stand up my systems, and I'll have them sharing reference data pretty quickly. Some of the flags that we throw up, though, they're a relatively new company in North America, I should say. They've been around in Europe. A lot of people who have expertise in the product yet, so you have to take that into consideration. And the other vendors have a lot more money to spend on marketing, so you're not going to hear a lot of advertisements from a company this size. And likewise, you're not going to see a lot of money being thrown on this and that. Okay, they're much more geared towards other types of marketing than the heavy print, et cetera. So at this point, I'd like to pass it over to Conrad Chung and crew and have them give us some insight specifically into a use case or two.
Okay, so if you look, these little circles here are indications of what's being shared across the different functional areas. It is a mix of public and private reference data. And when we think about how they chose to implement our solution, what they chose to use is both a combined hub and registry style implementation. And so if you look, and I don't know why it's taking so long to catch up here. Let me try this again. So if we look at the actual view of the implementation of EBX on their site, they were using EBX as a central authoring point for some kinds of reference data. So simple types such as, or simple reference data such as geographies, currencies, but then also some more complex ones, such as chart of accounts, business divisions, business segments, where they had to deal with hierarchies and adaptations to those hierarchies. And then at the same time, they were also using it as a consolidation point for HR information and for some of the contract data that was coming from other systems. So it wasn't just a hub, it was actually hub plus registry. And this is how it was implemented. And so central to this problem is obviously integration. So how do you integrate this product, or how you integrate your MDM or RDM system to the rest of your world is an important part, and that's part of what we build into EBX. And then finally, if we look at if you think about some of the adaptations or customizations that needed to happen in order for the applications to take root, what we needed is the ability to handle what we call the same structure, different values problem, which is that if you're dealing with a project hierarchy, you may need the same hierarchy to be pushed through to your different international organizations, but you're going to modify the labels or modify the languages. There's the different, I would say, structure, different values issue in which, this is very common with products in which you internationalize your product delivery overseas, and the product hierarchy or the service hierarchy is slightly different country by country. And then not only the actual hierarchy is different, you're also talking about different labels for the different products because they have to be internationalized. And then finally, you have that last different structure, same values, in one which we commonly see this in sales and marketing organizations where legal is pulling in legal hierarchy data or counterparty information to deal with risk management problems. And that legal hierarchy, which is useful for dealing with assumption of liabilities, very important for legal, very important for risk management, but not so good for sales, because sales doesn't need to know what the client or counterparty's legal hierarchy is. They want to understand what their selling kind of regions-based approach is to that client, and so they want to use or customize that hierarchy. So these kinds of adaptations are useful, especially when you're integrating across multiple applications and needing to take that reference data and use it in those particular applications. And then finally, when you think about what were some of the benefits that TechNip realized, they saw benefits across the different functional areas. And if you look at a couple here, what you can see, like integrated reporting or data alignment with finance, drastic reduction of time to deliver the spend map. Some of these benefits were delivered largely because we're now using consistent values across these functional areas, using consistent values across the different organizations that TechNip has to do project delivery. And because you have this consistency, then you reduce the amount of reconciliation that has to take place, you improve the quality of the reporting, and you also allow for some level of unity of effort. So that's a few of the items that TechNip realized. You can also go to our website, www.orchestra.com, or our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com, look for Orchestra Networks, and you can watch a video of TechNip talk about their project at a Gartner Summit, I think 2 years ago. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand this back to Aaron. Aaron, let me hand this back to you.
Okay.
Okay, and I guess we'll do the wrap-up, and then how about some questions if we have time?
Great. Okay, so I'm on the chart. I hope you can see it, Conrad, bottom line.
You'll need to start, let me see here. I don't see your chart now.
Okay, it says I'm showing. I just paused it and I'll show it again.
Okay. You should have a little box called Attendee View. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Is it showing through the Attendee View?
Yeah, it shows 100%.
Then I'm just going to assume that, yes, that we are bottom line.
Okay, good. Everybody sees that. Great. Okay, so the bottom line thought is that reference data is more than just reference tables. There's a lot of logical constructs for the mappings, both logical and physical mappings. There's across the representations, across domains, across versions and time, across hierarchies, et cetera. And there's something we call impedance mismatch if you don't use RDM, in particular where you have inconsistent reporting, regulatory non-compliance, transactional failure, and even systemic failures of the AIG type, where somebody just loses it because they didn't have the right data mapped between their systems, the glue, if you like. And so clearly, RDM is important. What's also interesting now is that RDM has become a focus point of organizations that are evaluating MDM because they see it as an entry point into MDM and data governance overall. Master Data Governance, MDG, and so therefore RDM is starting to get a lot of attention because of that as well. And what we want to remind ourselves also lastly here in the last 2 points is that most of the solutions out there don't really look at time travel. They don't get it when it comes to how to manage reference data hierarchies and values over time, and they also don't provide the governance workflows that I think we all agree are important to manage the quality, to enable the subject matter experts, the stewards, et cetera, to really affect governance of this master reference data. And then at the same time, there's some dogma going on in the industry, as there always is in any software industry discussion. There's dogma that says, well, you have to do it all in one software stack, or you have to get it all from one vendor. And in my experience, that's not the case. Otherwise, we'd all be running Microsoft or Oracle and nothing else. So truly, you know, it's a heterogeneous environment, so that opens up the door. How much heterogeneity is good for you in your software portfolio? And we're finding that large companies in particular are willing to look at somebody outside of the mega vendors when it comes to such things as reference data, because they understand that it can be implemented relatively effectively as a glue among the mega vendors even. And so that's opened up the door for some of the best-of-breed vendors to also show up as a viable candidate for such mission-critical reference data. And then the last message, hopefully, that you've caught as our real message here in this presentation is, don't build RDM. It's too hard, it's too complex. Other people have beaten the path for you. Learn from those pioneers, benefit from their experience that's now been instantiated in the commercial RDM software, the multi-domain RDM that's coming to market. So buy, don't build RDM. And I think Conrad's got the list of questions, and we've got, what, about 7-8 minutes here to go for questions if we're going to wrap up in an hour. So back to Conrad.
Yes, so I think we can leave this slide up, or if you want, you can advance to the contact information at the end of the deck, if you'd like. So in order to ask a question, what you can do is you can use the little question window down in the lower right-hand corner, and I can bring those questions up. And one of the questions here has to do with information about, maybe the question here, information about kind of your reports, your field reports, and would you like to talk about that, Aaron? So it's where you can get access to field reports. I can send you a copy of our field report, but I guess you're also doing some further research. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have a couple of market studies that are out there. Here's this, hopefully you can see a screenshot of our website. Is that up in front of you now?
And yes, well,
okay.
No, it's Q&A. But
so yeah, I mean it's MDM-Institute.com. So MDM-Institute.com, and it resolves to another older URL for our website. But in any case, we're the MDM-Institute.com, and as you tab across the top, you'll see MDM Research. As you drill down, you'll see product reviews, list of vendors, best practices, case studies, white papers, all sorts of stuff. So if you just drill down into the product reviews, then you further get, there's a subpage for MDM, one for Master Data Governance, and one for RDM. And then you can go out and you can look at the details, if you like, on that particular product that we've published. Now, we have an editorial calendar that shows up, in the product, when you go into the product reviews, off the MDM Research tab, as you see on the screen here, when you go to that pop-up, that pull down called Product Reviews, then you'll get also a list of the timings for the upcoming reports for some of the other vendors. And again, these are based on market demand, in terms of how many people are asking about this. So that's how we prioritize, how important is it to be able to leverage the research that we're gathering from our discussions with clients and organizations doing RDM and MDM and data governance. So that's how we affect that list. And again, as Conrad said, some vendors like Orchestra will take the field report because we don't charge for these things. They'll rehost it, or they'll email it out to their customers, or both. And then we also said, and should remind ourselves, that the broader market study, which takes all the information that you saw today and a lot more, and packages it into a nice 30 to 40-page report, that will be available January 15th. Again, no charge. It's just something we provide to the industry as a primer to get your arms around what is RDM and who are all the players and how do you evaluate them, blah, blah, blah. So that will be available January 15th, and my understanding is that Orchestra Networks is going to email either the link and or the report to all the registered attendees of these webcasts today. And likewise, we will be doing yet another survey. I mean, Conrad gave you a taste of some of the questions, but we have a much more comprehensive survey that's going out to several hundred RDM project managers that we're aware of, as well as the broader number of people. Basically, we see 3,000 people a year that come to our MDM and Data Governance Summits, 3,000 people who take 2 to 3 days and spend a couple $1,000s on a conference ticket, not to mention the time out of their business calendar to be there. So we've got a pretty good base of 3,000 people a year, representing about 800 or 1,000 organizations that are doing MDM and reference data. And so we will also be surveying those people who the last several years have attended our conferences, because we know they're actively interested and engaged in reference data, data governance, and MDM. And so we're going to do an RDM survey of them, and that information will be also provided in the January 15th market study that we do. There'll be some summary statistics about how fast people are adopting this, what are the key business drivers that are driving which industry to adopt reference data as a commercial solution, and so on. So there's more to come yet, more than what we've just shown you here. There'll be a lot more coming out in the next month or so.
Okay, and so thank you. So I guess the long and short of it is wait till January 15th, right?
Yep.
Okay, so another question here. You talked a little bit about lifecycle management. How do you handle changes in reference data? So I guess the element here.
Well, there's the specifics for Orchestra, and then there's the general answer for all the players. Is there's governance processes, there's workflow, where you stage the data in staging tables, and when it's approved for publishing, then it gets published and put into production, just like any other system. And that's why the workflow is so important, and that the workflow also be amenable and supportive of the hierarchy management, the visualization, and the workings that you have to do with reference data, and the code tables, and the being aware of the permissions, who's accessing what, and likewise where this is being consumed downstream or upstream, however you want to look at it. This is all important information and processes that are part of the workflow that are built into the commercial products.
So there's the workflow aspects, and I think also conceptually, when I break down the problem in my mind, I think about it as you want to define who is in the community of interest. You want to define what are the areas of responsibility for, and also accountability levels for each one of those individuals, so build that RACI chart. And then lastly, you also want to determine how do these individuals interact over time and over process, who gets to say and do what with it, who gets to approve information, who gets to create data. Those are those basic governance processes. So that's the governance aspect. It's unclear to me if the question, I mean, feel free to submit your question again, but it's unclear to me if the individual is actually asking about the version control aspects, because one of the things that we've seen, especially when it comes to financial hierarchies, is that you need to understand what the hierarchy was composed of at every moment in time. And so a lot of people take a very monotonic approach to financial hierarchy management. So you'll have an addition for Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, then Q1 the next year, et cetera. And there's issues there in which, in order to do appropriate and accurate performance analysis, you need to understand what the cost center composition was when you started and what was the cost center composition when you finished. Because oftentimes with restructuring, with changes, cost centers move around, revenue center move around. And I'm sure, Aaron, you can attest to problems like this, but I've personally seen situations where different divisions have been punished because they took the revenue centers away, assigned them to a different division, but they kept all the cost centers. So when you're looking at the end of year P&L, that division looks extremely bad because the hierarchies were poorly managed. So addition management, understanding how these additions relate to each other. So I think you talked a little bit about that crosswalk problem. Seeing those things and having a system that can handle all of that, I think is important, especially when it comes down to some of this private reference data. Did you have any further thoughts, Aaron?
No, I was just reliving my past corporate experiences when you were talking about that.
Yeah, I'm sure you and I have both actually been down to finance to argue with them for hours about the assignment of different cost centers.
Yep.
And then I think we have time for one last question, and the last question is, how do you manage reference data in a highly distributed world? And at least from our perspective, this is Orchestra saying that, this is why we think that it's important and critical that the RDM and MDM system that you purchase have a diversity of different integration patterns and methods. Everything from simple direct API-like connections to things that you want to use some service-oriented architecture or an ESB, enterprise service bus, to connect. It's largely that concept of having the MDM or RDM system provide data services. So that's the way we look at it. And then that's the baseline, in our opinion. But if you go a little bit further and you look at the big picture, I think that just providing integration is not enough. You also have to realize that, especially when you're dealing with customer data or confidential information, there may be requirements like PCI or privacy regulations in Europe, Sarbanes-Oxley, to obscure or obfuscate information that passes across international borders. So that adds an additional layer of complexity. So it's not just being able to, can I throw up a web service and allow someone to consume data? It's, are they authorized to consume that data? Can they see the full record? Do they need to see scrambled data? How do I make sure that they only have read-only access? There's like governance permission aspects to that too. Did you have any thoughts? And then I guess we'll close this out.
No, that was right on. So, amen.
So we did get a lot more questions than we could possibly ever answer. I will go through them and I'll send you all an email. Certainly, if you would like to get more questions in, feel free to put those questions in now so I can capture them and Aaron and I can respond to you. But with that,
Conrad, can you remind everybody how they get copies of this? It's going to be SlideShare or email or both?
Common question, big question. Will copies of these slides be made available? I've already sent a couple messages to folks that sent me that question. I'll send you a copy of the slides in PDF form. And as people are asking in PPT form, but it's proprietary data. So we'll send you copies of these slides in PowerPoint in PDF form. But after this, we'll also make the video as well as the slides available through SlideShare and YouTube.
Right, and if your coworkers or somebody you know wants to attend later today, we're doing another live version of this for the West Coast as well as Asia Pacific. So there's also another opportunity later today for if you came in late or if you want to have coworkers attend.
Right, and that would be at 6 p.m. Eastern our time or 10 a.m. Melbourne time. Those are those two times, or I guess 3 p.m. Pacific time.
Yep.
Okay, with that, thank you very much for attending. We really appreciate all the questions and your interest. If you have any questions or any comments, please feel free to send them to either Aaron or I. Our contact information is here on the screen. And have a great day. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.